0 percentile wingspan. Zero. Hello world, and welcome back to Gridiron Campbell, the only podcast that puts its money where its mouth is. I'm your host, Gridiron, and I'm joined by one member of the collective, Donnie D.P. Peters. Mo is gallivanting in Galway or some green pasture in the island of Ireland. Brett, I don't know, he's maintaining the farm. I don't know if there's been any snow recently. And there was snow like 2 weekends ago in New Jersey, so might be dealing with some snow still up in Buffalo. So it's just Donnie and I here to give you some draft takes. If you are watching this on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Listeners, rate and review on your podcatcher of choice. 5 stars only, like Heisman Trophy winner and presumptive number 2 overall selection, Travis Hunter. And Donnie and I are going to dig into some of these draft props, but not before Donnie and I air some grievances. Grievances. Wow, I think I butchered it again. In this market, because it seems like this year, more than ever, these books are terrified of listing props, of taking action. I saw our guy, and he is our guy. I love this dude. I love Jeffrey Benson. I love how he goes at people on Twitter. I generally think the folks at Circa do a great job of bookmaking, especially in markets like this, and are more willing to take on risk than others. Benson was complaining, books hate this, we're going to lose 5 or 6 figures on the draft. And so what? Like, get out there, set some good lines, do some trading like a real book should, and let's go. This is Donnie. This is one of the opportunities where, because there's information trading, that I feel like bettors can actually have a substantial edge when it comes down to games, especially in the NFL. We're dealing with razor thin margins in the outcomes of these contests. But when it comes to, putting the puzzle together, information sharing, I feel like people can find an edge in these markets, and it's just up to the books to set good lines and trade. Come on, guys.
Yeah, I mean, sports betting is lame now. What do you want me to say? Here's my take. Sports betting was better when the illegal offshores were in charge. Regulation.
Mo is on the podcast.
Regulation. This is my new take. Regulation. All these greedy corporations have killed everything. They've taken the fun out of it. As somebody who likes to bet for fun, seriously, yes, but for fun, it's becoming very not fun. I mean, you start winning, they just ban you. Cool. That's ridiculous. You can't find any good lines anywhere. And it's not even like, I was looking around the different books for the draft stuff, and it's, first of all, the lines are just horrible because, like you said, it seems like they're just very scared. Second of all, there's just not a lot. This is the only NFL event for months on either side. It should be like a Super Bowl type of offering, a buffet. You walk in, you can't eat enough. Why isn't there just nonstop stuff everywhere? It's just not available. And I think that, I don't know, maybe they're just too timid, scared. I don't know, but it's becoming less and less fun. And I can only blame the fact that when the corporations get involved, they tend to ruin everything.
Got to get those margins. Got to make sure the shareholders are happy. Got to get those SCPs going. And again, like you said, I'm a casual gamer. When I am in an eligible state, when I'm down in Florida with my folks, I love firing up an SGP on Hard Rock. Hand raised. But at least give me some decent odds. At least give me a plus 5,000 when it's a plus 5,000, and don't give me 2,500. Give me half odds because you're just chasing profit margins. Get out of here with that. And that's, I think, another reason why we support Circa so much, because they very much treat this as bookmaking and trading first. And they think their long-term view is that if they cater to people who want to bet on good lines, if they do that well enough, that they can dominate enough of a market share within that context to have success. And I'm certainly rooting for Benson and that crew, even if I get to complain about them during the draft season. A good example of this is a player like Luther Burden III out of Missouri. My guy, JJ Zachariason, in his model, Burden is the best receiver in this class, even if you include Travis Hunter as a wide receiver. This is all based on stats, height, weight, and there are some athletic testing in there. And I've seen folks out there who think Burden is a tremendous player, but there is a lot of stuff about Burden where he kind of took his last season off after exploding on the scene in his sophomore season, took some plays off, took some routes off, some character concerns. This would be a classic example of bookmaking where you have this great talent with a lot of red flags, and setting a market for him is quite ambiguous, and it will take some skill to set a market. And there's definitely very strong right tail outcomes and very strong left tail outcomes. And it would be fun to gamble on it. It would be fun to have adjusted Luther Burden lines as to what pick position he will be selected in. But instead, in all these major markets, they just remove his name from the board instead of actually doing some trading and actually doing some bookmark. Okay, we got that off our chest. That was 6 minutes of complaining. Let's talk about the actual draft itself. It seems as if, and I think you agree with me with what you had just sent me before record, it seems as if the draft starts at pick number 5. And I got to give a shout out to the Discord. I am patting myself on the back here a little bit. Look at the description for a link, or just go to bit.ly/DiscordMoose. We were on, at least I was, Cam Ward, first quarterback taken, -300 months ago. I was in there saying it is insane in any universe that as quarterback prospects for the NFL, that Cam Ward is any way comparable to Shedeur Sanders. And now it looks as if the slide is on for Coach Prime's son, where I'm seeing his draft number in the mid to low teens, the biggest inflection point being the New Orleans Saints at 9. But I feel like a lot of people are doing some dot connecting there with the Derek Carr injury, and I could see Shedeur falling even further. But if you were in the Discord, you could have grabbed Cam Ward -300, first quarterback taken. Now it's OTB. I won't even tout this one. You can get better than whatever return on investment you were getting for Cam Ward, first quarterback, Cam Ward, first pick. But it seems as if consensus is Ward, Hunter, Carter, Campbell will be the first 4 picks. A lot of smoke for Campbell being the selection for the New England Patriots there at 4. And I know your fandom is less so now, but what are your thoughts on the tackle being linked with Vrabel and New England? I think there's a lot of concern. I know there's a lot of concern with his arm length, specifically his wingspan. He has, this is true, a 0 percentile wingspan. 0. Donnie, there's never been a person, if he takes a snap in the NFL at tackle, who has had a wingspan smaller than Will Campbell. So a lot of concerns there, but it seems like he's going to be the pick at 4 for your New England Patriots.
Yeah, it does seem like it's trending that way. I know you mentioned that the draft starts at 5. It probably starts at 4.5 for me. I just think that there's still a chance, and a fairly decent one, that the Patriots just trade out of this pick at 4. And I'm interested to see what that happens. I think the top 3 are locked. I think the odds also reflect that, as you pointed out. And then I think 4 is, it's, 20% chance they trade out, something like that, So we'll see how it goes. I think the Will Campbell to the Patriots is the quote-unquote safe pick, right? I mean, they need to, improve the offensive line, for sure, in front of Drake May. They got to protect the guy. This is supposed to be the best one in the draft. Okay, you take that, it's great. Now, my issue with taking Will Campbell if I'm the Patriots is that the number 4 pick, you need a guy who plays day 1, snap 1, and is an impact player. Now, Will Campbell can certainly be that, yes. But, and listen, I'm not, an expert NFL draft scout, any of that sort of stuff. But, you just hear enough negative that it makes you question if he is that, day one, snap one, starter, potential Hall of Fame career, et cetera, blah, 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 which you should try and land with the number 4 pick. So if there is any concern, I would, if I was them, I wouldn't lean to just make the pick because it's ultimately the safest pick. And yes, even if it doesn't work out, we're probably not going to get killed for it in the long run. I would lean to listen, with that pick, we need a freaking blue chipper. And if this guy isn't a blue chipper 99% of the way there, then I'll take the draft capital and try and do something else, right? That would be my take on it. So that's why I say that, for me, I'm really interested to see what they do. Yes, I know everything is trending in the way that Will Campbell gets drafted by the Patriots, but I'm still curious if they do. What if somebody just steps in and tries to blow them out of the water for whatever freaking reason? These teams get a little bit crazy in the draft sometimes. You never know. So I would be curious to see if they end up staying there. So I'm going to be certainly watching the number 4 pick pretty intently on day one.
Yeah, I think the scenario there, and boys, it's smoke season. These next few days, I'm seeing a ton of smoke for the Jags taking an offensive player at 5. And the quote that I heard is that the Jacksonville Jaguars want somebody who can score touchdowns, which they have a 34-year-old GM, and their new head coach is a 39-year-old former offensive coordinator. So I believe it if those two guys, if they're objective, if they wrote on the whiteboard the first thing, we want to score. It's like the Billy Bean thing, right? Billy Bean, the scene for Moneyball. Runs. We want runs. And it seems simple, but it's a pretty good strategy when we know how valuable offense is in this league. And we know when you got a guy like Trevor Lawrence, we should lean into that and try to score as many points as possible and get Trevor Lawrence as much help as possible. So all that to say, I think what you're hoping for, Donnie, is that smoke starts to leak, whether it be Genty or Tet, who are the top skill position players at their respective positions, that you, as a Patriots fan, want somebody to get jittery and move up ahead of Jacksonville to take one of those players. I think that's the scenario in which the Patriots get a chance to slide back. And the Campbell conversation is fascinating because it's the ultimate ball knower versus Excel nerd argument, because multiple year starter in the SEC at LSU, all SEC player. The dude put on good tape. He played very good football. But there's just a ton of skeptics when it comes to somebody of that size. And I've seen even people that don't even guard him as a tackle in this class. They straight up just grade him as a tackle. They grade him as a guard in this class. So when that starts to be the conversation and, if he doesn't work out as tackle, we could just kick him inside, that starts to get really worrisome, especially like you said, at pick number 4. This isn't like a mid-first round pick. You need pick number 4 to be impactful, like you said, on day one. So
also, just quickly, this is why the stupid New England Patriots should have got the number 1
I feel
pick.
The same
this
way.
is
I feel the same way about the
100%
Jets.
why you get, because now you're not in this stupid position that you just have the number 1 pick, and yeah, maybe you just take Abdul Carter and say F everyone else. Maybe you just be like, listen, who wants it? Let's go. Show us the best offer. We'll drop back. No big deal. But now you're stuck in this weird middle ground where, listen, there's enough out there now from respectable people and experts in the space that study this stuff for months and months and months on end that you can go either way with Will Campbell. Yes, he might be great and he might turn out to be a Hall of Famer. That's not to take anything away from the kid. But there's enough that says that he, like you said, he might be a guard at the end of the day. His arms might not be too long. You just don't know. And that's what happens when you screw up the season and you drop to number 4.
0 percentile wingspan. 0. Do you put
I
TH?
do find that a little bit crazy, to be honest.
Is it 0 with? 0 with?
It's just that, in all these sports, you see all these people who overcome different things. Basketball, you see the super short guy who's amazing. You have one on your team, Brunson. He's freaking, incredible, but he's a midget. I mean, that's just how it is, and you see it everywhere with all these different players, and this guy, because his arm length is a few inches shorter, he can't be good. What if he's just really, really good? I mean, that could also certainly be the case. And then we're all like, that was the dumbest thing in the world, talking about his arm length for, 6 months.
Okay, let's talk Jags specifically then. You went full chalk. You're going for the Ward, Hunter, Carter, Campbell, Graham parlay at plus 190. Why do you think they're going to go Graham with this pick?
I mean, I think it's kind of safe. Part of me says I'm hedging a little bit because I do have Tet McMillan as top 10 and also under 12.5, and that's part of my picks here. And what I'll say with that is I think that there's a shot that he could go 5 to the Jaguars. So, and I have that at plus 210, and then under 12.5 is minus 126. So, it's kind of like there's a hedge there, yes. I think probably at the end of the day, they just pick the quote-unquote safer pick in Mason Graham. I think he's really good on the interior as a disruptor. He can just be an anchor on that side of the ball. I've seen comparisons to Williams, your guy Q for the Jets. Maybe not that good, but the light version, I guess. And this is a position that I think if you know football, you want to build from the inside out, from the two lines, okay? And I think that coupled with the fact that they have a new GM and a new coach, like they should want to get it right from the start. And I understand the talk of like, we want, touchdown scores and we want to be high flying and we want to be an offense and this and that and the other thing. Well, that's great, but that might get you fired in 2 years. Okay. Like you got to be a solid foundational team. And in football, the foundation is the lines on both sides of the ball. So, I think that this is one of those picks that, if you're talking about like with a top 5 pick trying to get a blue chipper, I think that this is pretty safe in that regard. Whereas let's say you do go with a Tet McMillan and you take that gamble. I've even seen some stuff that says, Genty could go there. I'm so anti running back early. It's not even funny. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. And listen, again, not to take away from Genty and how good he can be or will be. It's just ridiculous to do it when these guys have like career spans of like 4 years. It's absurd to do. So, and then with the wide receiver thing, it's just way more hit or miss than an interior defensive lineman. So just take Mason Graham. So part of me is like, I'm projecting what I think they should do and I'm betting in that way. But, I think that's a pretty good price there. So, yeah.
Graham is definitely a take your vegetables pick. He is, I think, the last blue chipper. I think there's 5 in this class. He's, like you said, a little smaller than Q, but man, he gets to the quarterback. And we've seen last year a team rule of trenches, the Eagles dominating on both sides of the ball right at the point of attack. Jalen Carter is a little bit of a different animal because he is just an Adonis. He is on I'll invoke the name. He's on an Aaron Donald-like trajectory, the amount of chaos he creates right at the point of attack. And I think Mason Graham, people are going to see DT next to his name and they're going to think like fat guy, 3-tech, run stuffing player, but he's not that. He is elusive and quick and a pass rusher. And yeah, I think he's going to be a really good player in this league. I just don't see a 34-year-old GM and a 39-year-old offensive head coach doing this. I came into today very interested in Kelvin Banks, the tackle out of Texas, who I think him and Tet have the most egregious prospect fatigue going into the draft because all those two players did was play great throughout their collegiate career. The model I was referencing earlier from my guy JJ has Tet as the exact same score as Rome Odunze last year, essentially. Rome Odunze was the 8th overall pick in an insane class where 3 quarterbacks went off the board immediately, and he was going up against Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors and still found a way to go 8th in that class. So I'm all aboard Tet top 10. Another Discord special. We were touting this at plus 400 in the Discord. I think the general draft community has way too much fatigue on a guy who, he just looks like Mike Evans, right? He's not super athletic, but he just has insanely long strides. He's tall as hell, and he goes up and gets the ball And honestly, he would be a great pair with BTJ, who could then be a slot-only player. You've got this safety who, what the hell do they do, right? Do they drop in on crossers on BTJ, or do they stay deep for Tet trying to take the top off? I think they would be a great pairing. But Kelvin Banks today on DraftKings went from plus 3,500 to plus 1,300 based upon some of the steam that was coming out. So what I'm going to do is, I think any offensive player is a worthwhile punt still. 1,300 is rough. I think Tet plus 700. I even think Tyler Warren plus 1,900 might be worth a punt. That's on FanDuel, that number, for the Jags in this spot. And because Kelvin Banks is getting all this 5 steam, I actually think he is a good click for the Las Vegas Raiders in the next spot at plus 1,900, best price on FanDuel. I think Tet is a fine sprinkle here as well at plus 2,300 on FanDuel, because I don't think Tom Brady is going to be in the room, have any kind of decision power. And like you said, Donnie, tell these guys to draft a running back. Like, do you think Tom Brady wants to spend the 6th overall pick on a running back? Spytek, who's the new GM, was in Tampa last year, was part of a team that punted on running back, took all those guys late that had success on that team. And then Pete Carroll, the last time Pete Carroll made a first-round pick for the Seattle Seahawks, it was Charles Cross. It was a lineman. He saw the success. So I really think that the Raiders could go lineman here. There's a lot of Membu steam, but that's why I'm pivoting to Banks. Banks just has a better price. Same with Tevin Bingham. What are your thoughts on your now hometown Vegas Raiders?
I mean, I think they take Genty. One is institutional stupidity. I don't care that Tom Brady's going to be in the room. The Raiders are the Raiders, and until they prove me wrong, I'm not going to say that they're going to be anything different. I do think that Brady would probably be one of those people who weirdly would tell you that the run game is extremely important. Not that the run game isn't important. I agree that having a run game is a good thing to have. Now, where we disagree is you don't need to take the number 6 pick and use that to develop said run game. You can basically build an offensive line and plug either Rich or myself behind the line, and we'll get it done. Like if you just build the great Cowboys offensive line, for example, then your problem is solved, and then you can spend the money there and not on the running back who's probably gonna deteriorate shorter than a lot of other positions. That's just how it is. But I think coupled with the fact that knowing what we know of Pete Carroll, from the Seattle days, I mean, he's run and play D. Unless he again somehow proves me wrong, but I have nothing to show me that he's gonna prove me wrong. Like, what was he doing in his time off? I know that. I guess the one comparison that you would make to rebut that argument would be when Mike McCarthy was like, "Oh, I spent time learning the new offenses or whatever." Yeah, and then he came back and he was still the same old damn Mike McCarthy. Yeah. It's like, are these guys really going to change? I mean, how old is Pete Carroll? 75? There's no way he's changing his ways, in my opinion. Like, he's just going to be the same thing. And, I think the Raiders right now have a somewhat decent offensive line, and they might think, well, this guy, Genty, is just incredible, right? So if we plug him back there, we were really bad when it comes to running the ball effectively last year. We let our guy go, and he had a good year in Green Bay, Jacobs. We need to plug that in. We have Bowers. If we believe in Bowers as much as we think that the Raiders do, and I think that there's no reason that they shouldn't believe in Bowers, and they have some belief in Jacoby Myers, and then obviously they have belief in Geno Smith bringing him in, and they think the offensive line is halfway decent, well, they might talk themselves into the fact that, listen, this is the spot, right? Or we're going to have to take the running back who's everyone is saying like the next greatest thing. So I still think they go there. That said, I also talked about the institutional stupidity. I mean, I would not rule it out that they draft Tet McMillan here. They do wacky, wild things, and they're like, well, what if we get Tet and we pair him with Jacoby and Brock Bowers and we got Geno? Let's go.
I think Tet is a perfect fit for Geno, right? Because Geno will climb the pocket and throw the ball downfield. And I think Tet has the he is the type of prospect that I can see being a very good downfield player in the NFL and could be a great fit with Geno Smith. I mean, you know what the ultimate galaxy brain, the Raiders are idiots pick is? It's Tyler Warren, right? If they just go 2 tight end with Warren and Bowers, that's the ultimate. But I mean, Brady had Gronk and Hernandez. So, I mean, if there is a galaxy brain mind blown outcome for the Raiders, it could be Tyler Warren at 6 in Las Vegas. I'm going to keep the
while I think they're going to take Genty, like it also, what if the Jaguars want to trade out? What if somebody wants Genty and they're like, well, the Raiders are going to take him. Let's just go up and get the Jags pick. And the Jags are like, okay, that's fine. Like we weren't super in love with Mason Graham or whoever, so we'll just get some more capital and move back. And then somebody jumps up. Like there's always that type of wild card scenarios that could happen.
Yeah, and the Shedeur thing, at some point, somebody is going to make a move for Shedeur. And like I said earlier, right now the inflection point is pick 9 with the Saints. Everyone is pointing towards the Saints and the fact that they might need a quarterback with this Derek Carr injury. And the other thing about the Saints that other teams are very aware of is that Mickey Loomis will just get his guy. The Saints are very famous for trading up and getting their guy. We saw it with Davenport. I think we saw it with Michael Thomas. Like, they are not afraid to have 3 picks in the draft because they traded up and got the player that they wanted in the first round. So it could even be the Saints themselves that just say, you know what, enough is enough. We're going to get Shedeur and call him our guy. I'm going to, real quick, I'm very offensive line heavy for this first round. And one of my favorite bets that I saw on FanDuel is that both Banks and Membu will be top 10 picks at plus 220. And I really like this because these 2 players are pretty much what you would want in a tackle prospect. With Membu, the biggest issue people are going to have is that he's only played right tackle throughout his career in college. But if the Jets don't go down the Warren route, for example, they have a gaping hole at right tackle that Membu could be plug and play on day 1. So you've got the upside in pick 7 there. And I just think Kelvin Banks is, again, it's just massive prospect fatigue. This guy, multi-year starter at Texas in the SEC, no issues whatsoever. He's, I think he was like an 8 RAS athlete, like just a really good player. And I don't see him escaping out of the top 10. So I like this parlay at plus 220. And then towards the back end of the first round, we've got a Chiefs team that has tried to sew up offensive line a little bit here in the offseason, but had a massive hole last year in the Super Bowl, which was fully exposed by an Eagles team who let Mekhi Becton walk and is always looking to recycle up front. So I think they're both candidates to take offensive line. And I just can't see Josh Connerly out of Oregon falling out of the first round with his ability at tackle. 8.85 RAS athlete. He's the 3rd tackle on my guy Connor Rogers' big board. He played running back in high school. This guy is like the definition of a dancing bear who can go out there and just look super agile and still has a ton of growth potential because he hasn't like filled out into his body. So this is minus 220. You are laying a bit of juice, which I do not like doing in the draft, but I just don't see a prospect of his ability, size, stature, and athleticism falling out of the first round. So I've got him at minus 220. You, however, you're a little bearish on O-line. You think under 6.5 will be taken on Thursday night.
Yeah, I mean, I think the position from everything that I'm seeing is not as deep at the top part of the draft, So I don't think people are going to, in the late first round be reaching a little bit as much as they might, for some other positions. Like I think edge rusher is pretty deep for the high end. And, I think that's a value position for a lot of these teams. You hear pretty much time and time again, you can never have enough good edge rushers. Obviously, I think a lot of people, recency bias, right? I think a lot of people saw what the Eagles did in the Super Bowl with that defensive line, and it's like, okay, we need that, right? We need that, which is like, yeah, they have a lot of really good guys, but they have a lot of them too. And they just keep throwing people at you from all different angles. And like, so how do we get that? Okay. And let's try and find those types of guys, So I think 5 or 6 feels decent enough to take plus 105 there at the under 6.5. It's not like an outlandish price. You're still getting plus money. So I think it's fine. I also think that, there's going to be some spots where I think teams get, again, probably a little bit crazy, over their skis. Like I look at the Cowboys, I think they'll probably splurge on a running back, even though I wouldn't, again, do that in the first round. I would just get running backs later. I think, you mentioned Burden, I think Ted McMillan goes obviously pretty early. That's what I'm hoping for at least. And then, you'll probably get some people that talk themselves into 2 or 3 other wide receivers. Same sort of thing with Jackson Dart. I think somebody ends up talking themselves into Jackson Dart. And what I'm getting at here is 5, 6, 7 picks are now off the board that can't go to an offensive line, right? So it's just filling up the space there and removing the potential and allowing me to hit that under is kind of where I'm at with this whole thing.
Yeah, you look at receiver. This is both first round and second round last year. Starting at pick 28, 5 of the next 7 picks were Xavier Worthy, Ricky Pearsall, Xavier Legette, Keon Coleman, Lad McConkey. A couple of picks later was Jalen Polk. So we know the wide receiver run is going to happen at the late end of the first round. It's just like you said, when does it start? And how hard does the avalanche crash? Because yes, Tet is probably the only high-end prospect, like you said, but people are absolutely salivating over the next tier of receivers in this draft. And it spans from Matthew Golden all the way to, I would even say like a Jack Besh or a Jalen Noel. There's a good group of damn near double-digit receivers that, based on what they do, they don't all play the same role in the receiver room, but they're all very talented in their own right and can find starting roles in the NFL, that there is going to be a run at some point on receivers. And it's going to be whether or not it's going to be the end of the first or closer to the second round. We do agree, however, on defensive line and the amount of guys and the amount of talent that is going to be selected in the first round, because I've got a matchup that was listed on DraftKings that Walter Nolan will be drafted before Simmons, the kid, the tackle out of Ohio State. And again, minus 250, don't love laying juice. But one thing I've come to realize when it comes to the NFL draft is that a player like Josh Simmons, we can get really excited about what he looked like pre-injury, and he was very good at Ohio State. But I think these teams take medicals and red flags, especially a knee, very, very, very seriously. And I don't know if the draft community, who are always looking for upside and always looking for the positives, and the greater betting community are really putting that into a wager such as this. They're both favored, very favored to go in the first round. No one's minus 800. Simmons is minus 750. I wish there was a market for Simmons going in the second round, because I think if that wide receiver avalanche hits and people are just worried about that medical, I can certainly see Simmons slipping to the top end of the second round. And like you said, after watching the Eagles dominate up front on the defensive trenches, I don't see a world where a player like Walter Nolan doesn't get selected in the first round of this draft. So I've got that, and you've got D-line over 8.5. A lot of big boys going in the first round.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's D-line / edge, so
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
you get Michael Williams. Do you get? I wonder how they grade this. I wonder how they're going to grade Javon Walker. Javon Walker, technically an off-ball linebacker, but people seem to think he's going to play edge in the league. But yeah, you've got Michael Williams, Shamar Stewart. There are so many freaks that are going to come flying off the board.
Yeah, and I think, again, this is a position that I think it was always a premium position, but I think it's even growing even more so. Again, I think the NFL is a bit of a copycat league, and it's like also that thought of what have you done for me lately, meaning the recency bias, again, pointing to the Eagles. That defensive line was ridiculous in the Super Bowl, and that's what everyone remembers all the time. So, like, how do we build that? There's also, like, some of the best players in the NFL right now are, those edge rushers, those defensive linemen, the Max Crosbys of the world, right? So, like, how do we get those guys, that type of guys? Of course, we know Abdul Carter's going super early, right? And I think at some point, a lot of teams are just going to try and fill this role. And I think this also kind of works as a nice pairing with, if I'm going under on a position, well, I need to find something to kind of fill the over, right? That makes sense in my mind. So this is where I think there's a good shot at it. Now, I'm also paying for it, minus 270. But it is what it is. I think that there's some decent value there.
Okay, let me get you guys out of here on my fight. One Jets drive, Florham Park, New Jersey, has been on complete lockdown ever since Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji were hired as head coach and GM. Honestly, the only things that have leaked out of there have been extremely minor. And there's been a lot of smoke to start this week about the kid Barron, cornerback / safety, potentially being a selection. And I just don't buy it. This building has not leaked anything. So the fact that some random player is coming out of nowhere and potentially being the pick, I personally don't buy it. I think they're doing everything they can to hide their over-the-moon infatuation for Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren was the only visit Tyler Warren made was to New Jersey to see the New York Jets. Tanner Anstrang, being a former tight ends coach, now offensive coordinator, being with the Lions and watching the impact that Stan Laporta had on that team, I just think it fits glove in hand. I'm not the biggest fan because of positional value. I'd rather see them take a tackle at 7, but I guess you could sell me if Warren is a better athlete than I think, that he is an okay pick at 7, and he has to have a direct impact day one. If you're going to pick him at 7, he's essentially going to have like the 9th highest salary at the position on day one, just because of the way the rookie salary works and because of how low tight ends are paid. So I still think Warren plus 300 for the pick is not terrible. All of that being said, Darren Muji was in the room when the Denver Broncos took Javonte Williams with the 2nd round pick. Aaron Glenn was in the room when the Detroit Lions took Jahmyr Gibbs, despite already having David Montgomery. I don't think Ashton Genty plus 3,000 is an insane wager for the Jets at 7. I think there is a world where they would try to make Genty and Brees a thing, maybe even trade Brees. This is the last year of his contract. But Muji and Glenn both having scouting backgrounds, I typically see this from a lot of scouts. When they make their big boards, they don't consider positional value. They just say, these are the dudes that are the best at football, right? Like, no matter what, these guys are going to be good at what they're supposed to do. And I can see Glenn and Muji, if it's on them at 7, and Ashton Genty is on the board, looking at one another and saying, this dude is the best football player available. We're just going to take him. So it's a punt. I think it's a punt. I think they do love Warren. But like, if you told me that these idiots took a running back with the 7th overall pick because they think he's the best football player in the draft, I wouldn't think you're crazy. But I would be pissed, Donnie. Like you, I would be apoplectic if Ashton Genty was the selection.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I mean, but this is also a spot where I could see the Jets trading out too. You know, like
please, I'm begging somebody, please trade, because we can get Warren in the low teens probably.
Yeah, I mean, I think generally this draft to me feels like a trade back draft in general. If it was me and I like had my pick of player, I would just pick Abdul Carter. I think he's the number one blue chipper in this draft. You know, I think Travis Hunter is right there as well. And then other than that, I mean, I don't necessarily know. So I would just always, in this specific draft, be looking for spots to trade back, acquire more capital, and go that way. Like, you know, I think you see it every year, you know, but I think this year it's probably emphasized the most by Cam Ward, is that people just talk themselves into these players and then they move up and up and up and up. I mean, the biggest one that I can remember was Carson Wentz and Jared Goff. Remember, they were like round 2 selections, and all of a sudden it was like, nope, they're going to go 1 and 2. Like, it was like, where did that come from? Because you need the quarterback, you need that, and then you just talk yourself into it, right? So yeah, I would just be kind of approaching this whole thing like it would just be a trade back opportunity.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I'm hoping somebody falls in love with Ashton Genty. Chicago Bears, come on down. Give us, pick 10? Pick 10 and a 4th rounder to move up 3 spots? Please. Begging you.
I have a question for you.
Shoot.
Would you rather be an overvalued Cam Ward, who is probably he's the best quarterback in the draft, but he might not be worthy of the number 1 pick, is kind of what I'm getting at? Or would you like to be on the other side where you're an undervalued Shedeur Sanders and you slide? So, with Cam Ward, there's going to be the expectation of a number 1 pick. Yet he might not, that might be incorrect to give him that expectation. Yes, he technically goes number 1 on the board, but is he really should he be like a Peyton Manning type, whatever? Probably not, no. But we're going to hold him to that because we're going to say he's the number 1 pick. Whereas if you're Shedeur and he falls to who knows, 21 where the Steelers are or something, then it's going to be like, oh, he's the underdog now. So which one would you rather be?
Well, it's also nature versus nurture, right? We look back at the Lamar Jackson class. He falls to a team with unbelievable institutional stability, great coaching, and a great environment. So there might be paths where Lamar Jackson doesn't turn into the player that we think he is today, but he landed in the perfect environment and took advantage of it. So that's the other added asset you get when you fall, right? Because you don't go to a team who sucks. The Titans suck. They are a bad football team. So you have to not only overcome the expectation, but you have to overcome the fact that you were on a team that was the worst in the NFL last year. So I think falling probably gives you a better chance if the talent gap isn't as demonstrative. I think what gets interesting is if you're like the first pick of the 2nd round, because then you don't get the 5th-year option, right? So you can get to free agency faster. So I think I would rather be pick 33 and try to get to free agency first. And if I'm good, then I can get a larger contract faster than Cam Ward. But I think in general, sliding's better. You're going to land on a better team, maybe even a team that trades up for you, right? Where they come in from the 2nd round to try to get that 5th-year option, and maybe they made a good pick early on, like the Browns, for example. Like if the Browns go Travis Hunter and trade back in for Shedeur Sanders, they already have a very good defense. They already have a very good head coach. You can sit behind, I guess you can sit behind Kenny Pickett for a little bit. I guess they can roll out Pickett, right? Is it Kenny Pickett week 1 in Cleveland? But you have Travis Hunter and you have some good talent. Cedric Tillman, Jerry Jeudy, there's some pieces there and good coaching. I think that's much better than getting picked by the Saints, who are in absolute cap hell and have a Chris Olave who's 1 hit away from no longer being in the league. Yeah, I think sliding is probably preferable if you're not an elite talent, just because of landing spot. What about you? Where do you land?
I honestly don't know. I've been thinking about it, and I wanted to ask just because I'm kind of thinking about it. I mean, I kind of would rather slide, again, be that underdog type of story who can eventually come out and say, I should have been a top 10 pick. You guys are all idiots. Like, look at me now type of thing. Versus, if you're Cam Ward and you don't live up to that number one draft pick expectation, it's just always going to live with you. Even if you have like a pretty good career, like, what if he turns out to be, I don't know, just a nice, serviceable, like 10th best QB in the league? People are still going to say, well, he's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Josh Allen. He's not because that's what you expect from the number one pick. So it's a tricky spot, right? I just wouldn't want that on me, and obviously there's nothing he can do about it. Like, he doesn't control how these teams view things, how they go after that unicorn that is the franchise quarterback, the Hall of Famer. So yeah, he's just in a bad spot. Now, that's not to say the kid isn't incredible and turns out to be incredible. I'm just saying, where would you want to be type of thing. So it's certainly not fun. I'll say that much.
I want to put this on wax. Kevin Clark said something similar, and I've been saying something to that effect. And I just want this to be on the record. I think Cam Ward is the most Patrick Mahomes prospect there has been since Patrick Mahomes. In that, because my wife Jenna was working at the U for the past 2 years. Now we're back in California, but she was at the U. I watched the U. I picked up Miami as a team to root for a little bit. And when Cam made mistakes, it was because Cam knew the only way Miami was going to win a football game is if he threw for 350 and 4 touchdowns. That their defense was so bad and that their skill position players were so mid that there was only one path to victory. And that was Cam Ward balling out. So yeah, when you see the crossfield pick 6 against Cal, a game in which, by the way, Miami came back from like a 21-point deficit and won on the road in one of the longest trips in all of college football from Miami to Berkeley. How that's a conference game, Lord knows. But his mistakes were a guy thinking it through and saying, well, I have to take a calculated risk. Somebody's down there. Let me make a throw. So I think this dude has a very live arm. I think he's athletic, accurate, and I think the dude is pretty freaking smart too. Like, he had autonomy at the line. He was changing plays in college, which is not something you see, but a multiple year player who started at something Incarnate Ward and had to work his way up to getting to Miami through the transfer portal. I'm rooting for Cam Ward. I think he has a shot to be a good quarterback in this league. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
Best of luck.
As well. Best
of luck in your betting ventures. Please console me if the Jets do actually take Ashton Genty with this. I'm going to need it. For DP, I'm Rich. Peace.